find something that you believe in more than just making money and dedicate time and energy and effort to that. The best way to do that is to use products and not just follow narratives, and to, to interact with people and ask questions and be curious. Kind of be self-aware, recognize that maybe the main driver to get in this space is to make money, but try to find something that you believe in more than making money. Because I think if it's just about making money for you, you're probably going to get not last. You're going to get chopped up. You're going to sell when things aren't looking as good, and so you got to find something more to believe in.
Yo, grab your headphones, get ready to vibe. ZEROPOD is coming at you when we're doing it live. ZEROPOD, yo, I said ZEROPOD, yo, ZEROPOD.
Welcome back to another episode of ZEROPOD, a zero copyright video podcast about people who enjoy Ethereum. I'm your host, Toady Hawk from the Zero Rights Media Collective, and today's Ethereum enjoyer is an OG in the space, an early Coinbase employee who went on to found a crypto venture fund called 1confirmation, which strives to be the first check out the door to game-changing products and protocols in the Ethereum ecosystem. His name is Nick Tomaino, and I loved learning about his sneaker collecting middle school days, his Bitcoin pizza-esque $30 million engagement ring, his bull cases for Degen, Farcaster, and Ethereum, and his best advice for new traders this cycle. All that and more coming right up. Lego. So one thing about this podcast, which is maybe a little bit unique for a tech podcast, is I do like to spend a couple minutes at the start just getting to know the guest a little bit and hearing a bit about the backstory and, what got you to where you are today. So I'd love to hear a little bit of the Nick origin story, if you don't mind sharing. I heard you used to be a sneakerhead when you were a kid. Is that true?
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I played a lot of basketball growing up, and part of basketball culture was sneakers, obviously. So yeah, I was collecting like Jordans and stuff like that in high school, and spending a lot of time actually on Nike Talk, which was like one of the first online forums that people were talking about, buying and selling shoes. And yeah, I've always, more so than sneakers, I've just always been kind of an internet person, and almost more interested in like connecting with people online who are interested in what I was interested in, more so than like people around me.
Well, it's kind of crazy if you think about it, that there's like these spontaneous markets that could pop up around these sneakers, and that people could sort of jump on forums and talk and negotiate. It's a precursor to what we see now, but at a very small scale.
Yep. I've always just been interested in collecting things. Like sneakers was one, rare books was another. Like actually, one of my ancestors was like one of the most kind of famous collectors of Americana.
No way.
And ended up, when he died, the family gave most of his collection away to like big museums and stuff like that. But it's
Like
always,
Smithsonian, that kind of vibe.
I can't remember. I know there's a bunch at Yale. At the Yale has a really cool rare book museum.
Nice.
And I think some of the collection was at Princeton as well. But yeah, so my dad was interested in it as well, kind of from that, and I kind of got interested in it from my dad. So
You got the collector gene.
Before crypto, yeah, I was collecting like Reminiscences of a Stock Operator is one of my all-time kind of favorite books by Edmund Lefebvre.
Yeah.
And it's actually really, it's kind of for people, I don't know, there may be some people watching this that are trading crypto, meme coins or AI agent coins or whatever. And
Surely.
it's kind of, it's a good book about kind of the psychology of trading. And the protagonist is Jesse Livermore, who's kind of a trader that has big swings up and big swings down. And
when is it set? Like, what's the timing of it?
The book was written, I think, in the 1920s or 30s, if I
Okay.
had to guess. But yeah, so I bought like it might have been I don't know if it was a Sotheby's auction or something, but this was before crypto again. Like I was online trying to buy a first edition of this reminiscences of a stock operator. And I still have it. I think it's
Nice. That's really cool. And that's kind of an example of the more things change, the more they stay the same. That, this
that
book
book
written
was.
in the
I had
1920s.
to fact check myself. Yeah, that book was written in 1923.
Yeah. Right. In the roaring 20s.
Hmm.
The first roaring 20s, hopefully.
I, I have pretty much just Edwin Lefebvre was an author who wrote that book, but he wrote a bunch of other books about kind of that era, Wall Street trading and stuff like that. So he wrote another book in actually 1901 called Wall Street Stories, and I have a first edition of that. And Making of a Stockbroker is another one.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
I'll have to look those up and see if I can get a copy. Sounds
Mhm.
interesting. Very cool.
I don't know how much I haven't followed the obviously, the amazing thing about crypto currencies as a collectible trading vehicle, whatever you want to call it, is there's lots of liquidity, and for rare books, there's not so much liquidity. So like I bought this book, Reminiscence of a Stock Operator, in maybe 2010, and I don't know how many other first editions have traded since then. Maybe a couple. I haven't followed the market at all, but yeah, as a collectible, I'm a much bigger believer in NFTs these days, I would say.
Yeah, lots of hodlers of those first editions. Not a lot of
Hmm.
open trading.
Hmm.
That's cool. So you were a trader from a young age. You did, in a manner of speaking, you did some sneakerhead trading. You got into rare books as well,
I wouldn't call
and
it trading though. I think it's an important distinction to make
collecting. Yeah,
in crypto. It's like even then, like I was buying things that I believed in and wanted to hold, like
yeah,
for life. So it wasn't like I was buying sneakers and trying to trade them for 2x or something. Like I was buying sneakers that I loved, that I would hold. I never sold any sneakers. I've never sold any books. I've sold very little crypto and NFTs, kind of in the history of collecting. So
yeah.
it's more buying stuff that I believe in, so than trading.
That's a really cool distinction. Why do you think it is that humans seem to have this inherent desire to collect things? I've thought about that a lot.
Um, I don't know. I mean, people want to make money, so I think a lot of it is driven by just a desire to make money. I think people have an appreciation for like art, culture, and like to express their appreciation for art or culture by by buying and holding. There's probably many different reasons.
I always wonder if there could be some like latent desire to sort of stock things away from the time in our evolution when we really had to sock things away for the winter like squirrels. You know what I mean? So I wonder if that's like, why is it so innate? Like even before money, people collected. And you just mentioned that you love collecting even though you'll never sell. So there's got to be a reason that we like just make building those collections up.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I think it's something that humans inherently like to do. I mean, I'm a big believer in just human desire is kind of based not on something kind of inherent within us, but actually the desire of others. And so there, there may be something mimetic about collecting, that we see other people holding stuff, and it makes us want to hold stuff or something.
That's a good point. Yeah, that kind of like maybe speaks to the strength of NFTs because it layers the community on top of the collection. So, like you said, maybe you want to collect a punk because someone you respect also has a punk,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Oh, that's a big part of it. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, going back to your story for just a quick second. So, you went to college and you studied economics, and then I believe you did management as well at Yale. Um, Tell us a little bit about that time in your life. What made you want to study, economics? What made you want to get into sort of the business field? Were there any particular reasons why you took that course?
Um, I would say early in my career, I just wanted to make money, and I wanted to like figure out whatever path would give me the best shot at making money. Like I didn't grow up with much, and I I was at actually a venture capital fund in Maine where I went to college, and I thought that going to Yale, having Yale on my my resume could help optimize for making the most money. Really, it was my thought process.
I mean, many such cases, and when you're in your 20s, I mean, that's what you're thinking about the most.
Oh,
Are you?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
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 So, how did you end up in venture capital? Again, it was just sort of this desire to figure out ways to get ahead and make more money.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, venture capital specifically, like it was kind of online. Like I learned about what venture capital was from avc.com, which was Fred Wilson's blog. Right? So Fred Wilson is an amazing venture capitalist who, has been doing it for quite a while, and was also very early to blogging, and so he was posting daily on avc.com, and I was kind of you know his blog and others. I was just kind of curious about technology and the internet and everything, and so I basically learned about venture capital from avc.com, and that was kind of what kind of made me curious about getting into it, and it's also part of what made me curious about Bitcoin. Um, so he was also writing about Bitcoin early.
Yeah, he was early to a lot of things. You actually, speaking of Fred Wilson, you actually worked at Coinbase, I believe, too, in 2013. Is that right? Like you worked for a few years as a product manager. What was that like?
I was one of the first employees. I mean, I was leading business development and marketing in the early days of Coinbase. So I was doing everything from like managing the Twitter account, writing blogs, kind of leading business development. So educating like online merchants about what Bitcoin was, and kind of telling them about the API to the Coinbase API to help them accept Bitcoin, which what it didn't end up being a big kind of business for Coinbase, but kind of in the early days, it was pretty important to giving Bitcoin more credibility. Like Overstock.com was the first online merchant to accept Bitcoin, and they used the Coinbase API to accept it. And it turned out that most people didn't want to use Bitcoin, and particularly for like a business like Overstock, it was not driving a lot of savings because just a very small percentage of their user base was using it. But yeah, I was like basically convincing merchants like that. I actually convinced Reed Jewelers, which I don't even know if they're still around. I'm curious. I'm gonna look it up, but I convinced Reed's Jewelers to accept Bitcoin, and they because they were getting some press out of it, and also getting some cost savings. I think they did a deal where like the first X amount of volume, they would give a 10% discount if you bought something with Bitcoin. So I actually bought my wife's engagement ring with Bitcoin.
Nice. That's a cool little bit of lore.
I mean, it's the worst purchase I've ever made, right? Because that's now $30
It's
million.
your own personal Bitcoin pizza, I guess.
Yeah, it's a $30 million engagement ring. So, and I thought the engagement ring was stupid, to begin with,
To
but
begin with,
that's what, that's what women, I don't know if they still, if it's still desire, I'm sure it is, but yeah.
some do, yeah, some do, I'm sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy story. How did you even end up at Coinbase in the first place? Because those are that's pretty early days, like you said, of Coinbase. That was when they were still a scrappy startup, not the Coinbase most people will know now.
hmm Um, I saw Brian launch Coinbase on Hacker News, and at the time I was in Portland, Maine, buying Bitcoin on Mount Gox. And to buy Bitcoin at that time in the U.S., you had to go to a local ATM, take out cash, then go to a local CVS and MoneyGram it over to Mount Gox, right? And so that's how I was buying Bitcoin. And then I saw Coinbase, and it was just a very simple product, right? Which is link a bank account and buy Bitcoin. And so I was one of the first, like, couple hundred users of the product or something like that, and just solved a simple problem for me. And then, like, the more I learned about it, the more excited about it I got. The summer before I went to business school, I then basically decided I wanted to go all in on this industry and either start a company or join a company. So I was like talking to everyone that I could in the industry, and I was spending time in the BitInstant office in New York City with Charlie Shrem. I was like Skyping with Mark Karpellis of Mt. Gox. And Brian Armstrong from Coinbase was the first person that I met that I like actually would have wanted to work with, like outside the context of Bitcoin. There were a lot of interesting, forward-thinking people, but not someone I actually would have wanted to work with. So yeah, I basically hustled my way in the door at Coinbase. Like I sent him probably 30 emails before he responded, and I was reaching out to merchants, emailing them from a Yale.edu email address, convincing them to accept Bitcoin, and some of those ended up being some of the big merchants that first accepted Bitcoin. So basically, hustled my way in the door.
What do you think it was about Brian that really made you want to go and work there? Because I've thought about that a lot, just thinking about how many incredible people Brian attracted to work there in early days, who have then later on, gone on to found some incredible things in the space post Coinbase, like Dan from Farcaster, and Jesse obviously with Base, still with Coinbase, but founding Base, and even Seneca and Nouns used to work at Coinbase. There's just Jacob from Zora. So many of these guys were early there. What do you think? Why do you think Brian was able to get so many incredible, talented people from all over to come work for him?
Yeah, I mean Olaf. You can't forget Olaf, who started Polychain. Zach Abrams, who founded Bridge, which recently sold in the largest acquisition in crypto history by like 2x. There's a lot. Um, um, I think Brian. His best trait is he keeps an even keel. He's stoic, and he's very thoughtful, but he kind of he doesn't get too high or too low, and he that would say is his biggest strength.
It's funny. Jesse quoted him once when he came on our pod, I think, and he said one of his favorite things that Brian would say is that it's never as bad as you think it is, and it's never as good as you think it is, which is kind of what you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good, especially in crypto where things are crazy, right? Things go crazy one way up, then crazy one way down. It's really it's hard to last. You have to have a deep belief, and you have to have a stoicism about you. If I think about most of the people I know that were in the industry 10, 12 years ago, they're not here anymore. So you have to have a stoicism. You also have a deep belief, and that's also something I think Brian had, was just conviction about at that time it was just Bitcoin, and um, Yeah, I would say conviction and kind of stoicism are two really good traits to have in crypto.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So after you went to management school, did you work in venture capital a little bit before you started One Confirmation?
Yeah, I work at a fund called Runa Capital. I was kind of trying to do like crypto deals, but they weren't really, they were curious about it, but they weren't really believers quite yet. This was in like 2016. Um, and, at that time, and I think still, it's kind of an industry where you have to spend all your time in because I don't blame anyone who doesn't get it or skeptical because there's a lot of scams, there's a lot of shady shit that happens, and so um, yeah, I was trying to do some deals. The partnership wasn't interested, and then they really were supportive of me starting One Confirmation. So they kind of I think they saw my passion for crypto and were very supportive in me getting started. So.
Very cool. So can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of One Confirmation? Even the name, I'd love to know where the name came from and what the general thesis was for the fund when you started it.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this a lot. Really, the idea was to take my experience at Coinbase and replicate it many times over. So, in the early days of Coinbase, I was basically the non-technical guy in the early days, helping on business development, marketing, community building, and I loved doing that. And I love kind of bleeding edge crypto. So I want to start One Confirmation to invest in early stage projects. And not just provide capital, but also support on the kind of business development, marketing, community building side. So yeah, I mean, a confirmation is a blockchain term for for when a transaction gets added to a blockchain, right? In the case of Bitcoin, the miners confirm a transaction by adding the transaction to a block, and so one confirmation is kind of the first time that a transaction gets added to a blockchain, right? And so the idea with one confirmation is kind of the first money into to great founders building crypto products that are pushing the space forward.
I never made that connection before, but that's clever. You were an early investor in many apps that people will recognize, like OpenSea and even Coinbase, and pretty early to Ethereum. Although obviously One Confirmation was after the Ethereum ICO and everything. But you were early to a lot of these companies. Is there any stories you have about that time? What was it like, sort of being early to a company like OpenSea that would later kind of blow up?
Um, Yeah, I mean, it's been good. We've had a good run, and we're still, working harder than ever to find the next projects that are going to push the space forward. Really, that's kind of our north star. We're not chasing narratives or chasing money. We're investing in products that we think can really bring in new people to crypto. Like our internal goal is how do we get to 1 billion crypto users as fast as possible, and so yeah, it just requires finding good founders who have ideas about building in crypto. So I think there's a lot of story like and OpenSea in particular. I was one of the first users of OpenSea. Like I was buying and selling CryptoKitties, and this was in the I think it was like the winter of 2017, I believe. Like December 2017 is when CryptoKitties kind of launched and got a lot of attention. A lot of people thought it was really weird, even within crypto. People, right? Didn't really get buying and selling cats. So I wasn't like a huge CryptoKitties person, but I was curious about it, so I was buying and selling cats. And at the time, you could only do it on the CryptoKitties website, and they charge 5%. And I thought, if this is an NFT giving users true ownership of the asset, you should be able to trade this elsewhere, right? And so I found Opensea, which allowed you to just trade CryptoKitties for 2% rather than 5%. Again, like pretty much every product that we've invested in, we're investing because we like the product first and foremost, and there's a lot of narrative chasing in crypto, and you can make money from chasing narratives. So I'm not really knocking it or downplaying it, but I think to make a lot of money in the long term and to really make a big impact, you have to be doing something before the narrative exists. And so if you look at our portfolio, we've invested in many category defining products because we like the product before the category exists. So that's kind of our strategy. But in the case of OpenSea in particular, they went through Y Combinator, so they were like kind of well known in Silicon Valley. It wasn't like this kind of hidden project, but coming out of Y Combinator, no one was really interested. They didn't get NFT trading. They kind of dismissed it. But I
It was a bit early, right? Maybe in a way.
Early.
Like it was a bit early to a lot of people wanting to trade NFTs. It was obviously prior to 2021 and all of the froth that happened in NFTs at that time.
Yep, 100%.
So let's talk a little bit about Degen. You talked about getting into projects that you think are category defining early, and I know it made a lot of waves on Farcaster, where I'm very active. When you guys invested in Degen pretty early, what made you want to invest in Degen, and what made you want to sort of work with Jacek and the team on what they're doing?
Again, it was a product that I liked. I've long felt that kind of social tipping is a like very interesting use case that could bring new people into crypto, right? When I was at Coinbase in 2014, I launched the Coinbase tip button. So at that time, it was kind of a Facebook like button type of thing that bloggers could add to their website with a little bit of JavaScript and allow users that connected via Coinbase OAuth to tip like $1 worth of Bitcoin or something like that. It was an interesting experiment. It didn't end up working. We shut it down relatively soon, but we got like Mark Cuban on his blog to add it, and Adam Carolla and some big people at the time. So it got a little bit of attention, but it turns out like the one of the original sins of the internet is that people are just used to getting content for free, and so advertising is the business model. And
you're preaching to the choir on this one.
And advertising being the business model is is actually really bad for consumers in a lot of different ways. But back to Degen, I mean, the thing I liked about the Degen tipping mechanism is when you tip, you're not giving something for nothing. You're actually giving kind of nothing for something. The nothing is you don't get the tip unless you use it, and the something is you're actually spreading a token that you own and believe in. And so I thought that was a really cool mechanism. That it also it had been tried before with Steemit, which kind of had a run in maybe the 2018 timeframe or something like that. But I don't know. It's kind of it's a typical investment that we make in that, like, we study the space. We've learned a lot over just being in the weeds for many years, and then we see a new idea come along that maybe just is the right product at the right time.
Yeah. I loved how Degen, you kind of touched on this, but I loved how Degen was like an evolution of things like Dogecoin, where there was a lot of tipping and whatnot being done in the early days of Dogecoin as well. But in those cases, you were really giving away your Dogecoin. That was kind of the whole point. Or even people that used your blog plugin, they were giving away their actual ETH or their Bitcoin, whatever it was. But in this case with Degen, like you said, you're just giving away your allocation, so it kind of frees people up to be more generous with their tipping. It was pretty cool to see how it spurred so much growth on Farcaster as well. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear your thoughts just on Farcaster in general. There's been a lot of hullabaloo lately, kind of on crypto Twitter and elsewhere. Oh, Farcaster's dead, and I don't think that's the case at all, being an active user over there. But love to hear your thoughts on Farcaster, how they're evolving, and what you think about the future of Farcaster, if you would.
Yeah, I like Farcaster. I mean, I think it's the best decentralized social network that exists right now. I think we're people, more people in the world are realizing the problems with centralized social networks, right? And I think just like there's centralized money, and then Bitcoin came along and decentralized money. I think there's a strong need that will be increasingly apparent over time that we need to decentralize social media. And X is is better with Elon, but even X, in the past couple of weeks, there's been a number of users that have been censored without clear explanation why, and so it's still kind of at the whims of Elon. So I think like social networks running on decentralized infrastructure that's censorship resistant, and that gives users ownership of their own data. That is just inevitable, and I think Farcaster is doing a pretty good job of it. I think what's initially going to bring in people, though, is like the financial side of things, and so I also think things like Degen are really important to get people to leave centralized social networks and onto decentralized social networks. Like I don't know that, even though censorship is a big problem, that a small group of people is increasingly realizing it. I don't know if it's enough to just have the decentralized infrastructure, right? So I think what's really important is like new ways for people to make money, and I think I don't know. I've talked about this with the Farcaster team, and I think they are kind of recognize the importance of it too. I'm not sure the degree to which they do, but I believe that like Farcaster could benefit from leaning more into new ways for people to make money, and it feels like there has been some resistance to it.
I feel like this cycle, though, I've noticed a marked change in DWR's attitudes with regards to speculation. I think on the network, so maybe you and other people chatting with them about it have made a difference. Because the first time around, like when Degen first came, I know that Dan wasn't super happy about it, and it was like very controversial. And obviously, it's become a mainstay of the network now. And now I see Dan, encouraging people to check out Clanker and some of these more speculative assets and projects that have come out of Farcaster, which I think is good. Like speculation. Jacob from Zora always said that like speculation is a superpower, and I do kind of believe that it has those elements.
More so than speculation, though, I think specifically it's giving people new ways to make money. So speculation is one way, to allow people to make money, but give like something like on-chain tipping or on-chain minting of NFTs and selling. Like I think new mechanisms beyond just like pure speculation of a token is really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious if you've been paying attention to any of the other kind of projects that have been coming out of the Farcaster ecosystem recently, and if you're bullish on them, if you think they're great, not so great, like Clanker, for example, in particular, or Anoncast, Clanker Mon, Banker. Are you familiar with any of these projects?
Yeah, I've seen them all. I've looked at them to varying degrees, and I would say, yeah, I think they're cool. I think I love to see experimentation. None of them have really stood out to me as something new and different that's pushing the space forward yet. I mean, again, the ones you mentioned have been only around for a couple months, right? So I'm it's early to make any judgment, but like my North Star for getting really excited about something is like, is this something new that's pushing the space forward in a unique way? And like, if you look at our portfolio, the answer is yes in every case. So that's kind of our bar for an investment perspective, but and those are the things that I really want to see and would get excited about. But I love to see any experimentation. So again, all the ones you mentioned I think are cool.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment as well. Like Clanker, I think is not super novel in the sense that like token launchers have been around for a long time, but I do think it's interesting how they've managed to integrate it with the social graph, and that's kind of a neat way to experiment. Is just like what kinds of things can you do that are maybe overpowered when you integrate them directly with the social graph on Farcaster.
For sure, for sure. Have you? I mean, have you launched a token with Clanker?
I actually did, yeah. So when Clanker first came out, I decided to launch a fan token for ZeroPod just to try it out and see. And I've been experimenting with it just a little bit, using it to incentivize mints on the podcast because all of our episodes of the podcast are minted on pods.media. And just doing a little bit of cross pollination between the NFT collecting community and the ERC community. It's been interesting. I think it is neat that they've made launching a token so easy, even if you don't know any solidity whatsoever. So I do think that is an unlock for creators and for people who wouldn't otherwise ever probably launch a token.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yeah, I love minting and feed. Like I think that is underrated right now. I would say. I think something like pods, dot media, where you could just mint a podcast in feed to show support for the creator for a buck or whatever in one click. To me, yeah, that is. I think that's going to be it's going to be massive. Like social feeds that you can just show support for creators in one click. It's another it kind of I was talking about microtransactions earlier. It's another microtransaction, and the reason why I think it's going to work is because again, people don't want to give away something for nothing. But in the case of like if you're minting a podcast for $1 on chain, you're giving something, but you're actually getting something as well, and it's not necessarily with a high expectation of financial upside, but there is, a chance that you make money from an NFT you mint, right? It becomes more valuable. So I think, like X copy doing a million mints of his fly artwork, I thought was awesome. I'm surprised more like high end artists haven't done more of that type of thing yet, but I think that's gonna like with NFTs. I think the next wave is likely to be driven by something like that, where um,
I helped Corey Van Loo do his first drop on base, and it was crazy how hard it was to convince him that it would be worthwhile to do a mint that was a free mint that was on on an L2, and that he could still make enough money that it would be worthwhile for his effort. And he ended up making more on that mint than he had for any piece in some time, minting and selling them by auction on mainnet. So, but it's hard to get people to change their minds about these types of things sometimes. Yeah, and speaking of pods.media, I think that they're really brilliant in the way that they've leaned into the patronage angle, because they're actually a fork of Zora, as you know, and they decided not to upgrade to the most recent Zora protocol because they didn't think that the art coin meta was kind of like the direction for podcasts. And I think that was kind of a good decision, because I think when you put a podcast on chain, like you just said, you want it to be in feed where someone can collect it with one click, and not necessarily, being traded on Uniswap as an ERC20 isn't really the vibe, I don't think. So you recently had a tweet that caught my eye. Maybe I'll share it here and just ask to expand on it a little bit. But you said crypto culture in high school terms. Ethereum is the kid in class who's friends with everyone trying to lift the class up. KOLs from competitors that have been attacking for years are the bullies who lash out and distract the class because they're insecure. Just curious, what inspired this tweet? I think I know, but if you could share, and what maybe expand on that.
I mean, Ethereum gets attacked from both ways, right? Like it's always been attacked from Bitcoin maximalists who were threatened by it, and and I love Bitcoin. I've been buying Bitcoin for the past 12 years. Will never sell. But anyone that's looking kind of objectively kind of understands that Ethereum has actually been great for Bitcoin, right? Like if Ethereum never, if never came, we might not be talking about Bitcoin, because Ethereum introduced many use cases beyond just digital gold, right? Like DeFi and like NFTs and like prediction markets and like stable coins and all these use cases. And it's funny, there's people out there that like own Bitcoin, that love Bitcoin, that also like believe in stable coins, but don't believe in Ethereum for some reason. And it's like, it's completely inconsistent.
And there's the other side too.
What's up?
You said they're getting it from both sides. There's the one side, and then there's the other side that they're getting it from as well.
Yeah,
all the other L1s and
I mean Solana people and other whatever the flavor of the week is for like a new L1.
Sui, say all the other ones, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot of loser energy from Solana in particular. I would say, like you look at all the KOLs in Solana right now. All they're doing is talking about Ethereum. And why is that? I think it's because there's some insecurity there.
Reminds me of that Mad Men meme, the elevator meme, where he's like, "I don't think about you at all." You know what I'm talking about. They're always Ethereum always living rent free in their heads. Why do you personally believe that Ethereum will win long term, even though maybe in this cycle, if you don't zoom out, maybe Ethereum has underperformed some of the other assets on both sides of the coin that you just talked about. But why do you believe that Ethereum will win in the long term, assuming you do?
I mean, by win, I guess win.
I just mean that you're bullish on it.
I mean, I think many many projects can win, right? So I think the main critique I would make for anyone that's like shilling FUD against Ethereum or anything else is like I think it's still positive sum, and I think the negative sum energy is kind of counterproductive. So yeah, I mean, Ethereum, though, I do think that there's a unappreciated chance that in the long run, ETH actually flips Bitcoin. And right now, the Ethereum market cap is some like 22% or something last time I checked of the Bitcoin market cap, and Bitcoin is the OG, right? It's the authentic project that catalyzed this whole movement. And so I still think the odds are that that Bitcoin will remain number one, but I think there's again an unappreciated chance that Ethereum flips it, because um, the main thing that Ethereum lacks is a strong narrative, right? So Bitcoin has a very strong narrative, digital gold. Ethereum has basically all of the use cases that have pushed the space forward, all of the most interesting developers building new applications on it. It has the best long-term framework for scalability, which is L1s, L2s, L3s. Um, it just doesn't have a strong narrative, and I think that the narrative is something that can change over time, right? And so I think there's a chance that the narrative becomes, you know, ETH is actually a better store of value, and it's used for all of these interesting applications that are pushing the space forward.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the ETH is money narrative that a lot of OGs have been sort of espousing lately, but also with the additional sort of caveat that it's also oil or whatever else you want to call it. You can use it. How do you communicate that well to people who are coming in and maybe don't know anything about Ethereum? How do you communicate well that it's both a store of money and also a way to transact, a way to build?
I'm not really that worried about communicating it. Like that's not, like I'll tweet about it occasionally, and share what I think, but it's like I'm not spending a lot of time communicating it. Like yeah, I've heard from a lot of people like Ethereum needs like a Michael Saylor or something, and I just fundamentally disagree with that. Like I think the best thing about Ethereum is that we don't have a Michael Saylor. Um, like to me, Michael Saylor is the biggest risk in Bitcoin right now, and I don't think it's a long term risk, but I think it's a short term risk that MicroStrategy owns over 2% of the supply, and there's a chance something bad happens there, right? So again, guys like Saylor can worry about going on TV and communicating it, in a certain way or something, and maybe that'll come from Ethereum kind of organically. But I don't really think Ethereum needs that. I think the main thing Ethereum needs is just to keep being at the forefront of innovation, and having apps come out of the ecosystem that are pushing the space forward in new ways, right? Like, what was the most interesting app in 2024 in crypto? It was Polymarket, right? And Polymarket is coming from the Ethereum ecosystem. The
It's crazy how accurate it was too during the election and many other such examples, but how much more accurate it was even than traditional polling.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it called the election before the mainstream media did, right? And that's kind of all you need to know. So yeah, we need more apps like that are not these inward meme coin. And again, not dismissing meme coins. I'm glad that people are making money from meme coins, but it's like it's this kind of inward stuff that maybe people will move from Solana to Hyper or whatever, or Hyper to Sui, or whatever. Like there's a there's you could probably make money from doing that. There's a community of people that wants to do that, but that's not really growing the pie. Like what we need is new applications that are pushing the space forward. And that's what I'm focused on. Is helping push these apps forward. That's just what I love doing, and I think what I'm pretty good at. So yeah, the narrative stuff, or telling people why they should buy something, is not what I'm focused on.
It's very PvP too, right? Like, sure, some people might make money chasing those narratives around, but most people are just chasing them around, getting dumped on. and on 5 different chains. So, very PvP. And I love what you said earlier about, being having a positive sum mindset, because that's something that's very dear to me as well. Like, I think that's the biggest promise of crypto is to find positive sum ways to cooperate and make the world a better place. And I think blockchain enables a lot of that, even as it also enables a lot of PvP behavior. But you talk a lot about skin in the game. I'd love to hear you sort of describe for our listeners, what do you mean by skin in the game? Why is it so important?
Um, I mean, I basically mean kind of risking something, and where, if you're right, you'll benefit. If you're wrong, you'll lose. And I think crypto, the biggest kind of benefit to the world is allowing more people to have skin in the game, right? And for many people, the first way that you get skin in the game is just owning Bitcoin, right, or owning ETH, or whatever the asset is. And for billions of people in the world, like, crypto was the first way to actually own anything, right? There aren't still developed stock markets in many places in the world, and there's not easily accessible real estate markets. And so, like, I think this concept of just being an owner, and believing in something where you're risking. If you're wrong, you lose. If you're right, you win. That is very important. So that's kind of at a high level what I mean. Skin the game, but it has many other meanings, right? I mean, like, in prediction markets, I think it's very kind of apt, because the mainstream media doesn't have much skin in the game, right? They kind of, their narratives are often false, at really no cost. And the great thing about prediction markets is you actually have people from around the world that do have skin in the game, and that's why the markets are often more truthful than the media narrative, right?
And even if the mainstream media, did have more skin in the game than they do, the individual people that they're asking in these polls don't have skin in the game, and that's a problem too. Like, if you're asked an anonymous poll, who are you going to vote for? You might be social pressured to say the person you think you're supposed to say. You're not going to say the person you're actually going to write on the ballot when you get behind there. But if your money's on the line, you're going to say who you wrote on the ballot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it also applies to Farcaster, right? Like, to me, the the reason why people should leave X and go over to Farcaster is because Farcaster gives you the ability to not just be a passive observer, which 90+% users on X are, but actually kind of an active participant, where you can you can own tokens, you can mint tokens, you can create and sell tokens. So giving people kind of more skin in the game when it comes to social networks, I think, is what is the defining feature. So I think it applies to crypto broadly, but also within crypto. I think if you look at why this product versus a Web 2 product or whatever, skin in the game is often the answer.
If you could pick one thing, or just one or two things, what are you most excited about for 2025, coming into a new year here? Anything that's got you really fired up?
I mean, there's a lot. I think the easy answer is just there's a new administration that is not going to be antagonistic to crypto, right? And so I live in the U.S., so I'm personally excited about that. I think there's a chance that the expectations are high for the new administration, but I actually think there's a chance that the expectations are exceeded. Like, I think there's a chance that we see some really crazy pro crypto policies implemented.
Yeah, like, a lot of people were bullish just to think that there won't be at least the antagonistic things that you talked about, like the SEC suing everybody and giving a Wells notice every week. So like, if there's positive things too, then it could be a huge bullish catalyst as well.
Yeah, like, I think I think no cap gains on Bitcoin and clear cryptocurrencies is possible, right? Like right now, there's 22 countries in the world that don't have a tax on cryptocurrencies, and they're separately outside of like crypto. Thomas Massey from Kentucky in 2024 kind of created this proposed a bill that's supported by 20 or so members of Congress that wants to end the Fed, right? And so this is kind of a movement that's happening irrespective of crypto. But I think if you end the Fed, you need to introduce currency competition, and what better way to introduce currency competition than to treat like a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency, right? Right now it's treated as a property, and it's not tenable for being used for transactions. So I think stuff like this is possible, and I'm excited about it. But that's the high level. I don't spend a lot of my time on that. What I'm really most excited about, most focused on, are like what are the new products that are pushing the space forward, right? And I think I'm still probably most excited about what I would call kind of information finance. This came from someone on Twitter, actually. I forget who it was, but I was posting it and they replied and they said we should call this information finance. So I think like financial products that kind of combine information and ways for people to make money are still in the early innings, right? Like you could say like Polymarket and Farcaster are both kind of examples of this. But I think there's going to be a whole lot more. So I think like we need to bring more truth to the world. We need to give more people the ability to make money, and products that kind of combine these two things. I'm very excited about.
As we wrap here, any advice that you would give to people who maybe are new to the space? You've been around crypto for a long time. You've seen a lot of things. What piece of advice would you give to folks that are new to the space?
Conviction and stoicism, right? So like I would not, and this is easier said than done, right? Because when I got started, I was chasing money too, and I get the need to chase money, but especially like when you don't have anything. So and that's what gets a lot of people in, and that's what drives a lot of the meme coin trading and other stuff. So I get that, but I would say find something that you believe in more than just making money, and dedicate time and energy and effort to that. And that the best way to do that is to use products and not just follow narratives, and to to interact with people and ask questions and be curious. So that's really kind of what I would say is kind of be self-aware, recognize that maybe the main driver to get into the space is to make money, but try to find something that you believe in more than making money. Because I think if it's just about making money for you, you're probably going to get not last. You're going to get chopped up. You're going to sell when things aren't looking as good, and so you got to find something more to believe in.
I love it. Believe in something. I appreciate you sitting down with me, Nick. It was a great conversation. I feel like we could probably chat for hours, but I'll let you get back to your evening.
Okay.
We'll chop it up, and I'll let you know when it's ready.
All right. Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, let me know if I can be helpful at all.
Okay, we'll do, Nick. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.